In Ethiopia, civil society does not exist. Journalists are being put in jail. The bloggers are being put in jail. This is a country that where it is against the law for women's rights, child rights, disabled rights, reconciliation. The World Bank has failed miserably. The money that's supposed to help the people harm the people. This government should not get away with it because they are alliance of war on terror. U.S. can have it both ways. To have a government that respects the Ethiopian people, have the rule of law, and have a government that really can protect the national interest of the U.S. In the long run, all of us have right, have responsibility for the well-being of those who are vulnerable, who cannot speak for themselves. Thank you.
I am pleased to welcome all of our witnesses and recognize your hard work on these important issues. Some of you have traveled long distances to be here, and you are bringing deep expertise and on-the-ground experience from 3 regions, Europe, Africa, and Latin America, to share with us today, and I'm grateful for all of your efforts. I would like to extend a very special welcome to the United Nations Special Rapporteur for Extreme Poverty and Human Rights, Professor Philip Alston. Professor Alston is an internationally known expert on human rights and international law who has served the UN in various capacities since the 1980s. I know him as a strong advocate for economic and social rights, including the right to food that is so important for ending hunger, and we are honored by his presence here today. Every morning I get up and I listen to the news, and often it's bad. Lately it seems like that we are constantly confronted with new or worsening human rights situations and crises. Some, like Syria, Iraq, Egypt, Burma, are due to armed conflict or internal unrest or a combination of the two. But others are due to ongoing, long-standing situations in which large numbers of people are relegated to the margins of national life and living in conditions that are wholly inconsistent with human dignity. I'm talking about poverty, which in spite of some progress in recent decades, still affects nearly half, 44%, of the world's 7.3 billion people. In 2011, more than 1 billion people were living on less than $1.25 per day, the threshold for extreme poverty. Another 2.2 billion lived on less than $2 a day, the average poverty line in developing countries. These are mind-boggling numbers. But poverty is not merely about a lack of income. It is also about not being able to access even minimum levels of food, water, education, health care, and housing. Poverty is about not having work or an adequate standard of living, conditions that are indispensable for the full development of one's being, as is recognized in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Or, let me put it another way, not having work that helps provide an adequate standard of living, because we all know that the poor work very, very, very hard every day, but still remain mired in desperate circumstances. So the figures that I just cited are from the World Bank, an international financial institution whose goals include ending extreme poverty. The World Bank Group, which works to achieve those goals through development programs and projects. It is a development agency, not the only one, but certainly one of the most important in terms of the amount of resources it expends each year and the scale of funded projects. If you take a look at the bank's annual World Development Report, you will find information on the state of poverty worldwide defined by income level. You will also find information on a range of other issues that the bank has identified as key for achieving development, gender equality, child labor, rule of law, ending corruption, fostering good governance, and ending discrimination against indigenous peoples, amongst others. When the bank talks about these issues, it links them to human rights, which is appropriate. As early as 1998, the World Bank acknowledged that creating the conditions for attainment of human rights is a central and irreducible goal of development, and that the world now accepts that sustainable development is impossible without human rights. Yet, for a variety of historical reasons, the bank has long resisted explicitly incorporating human rights into its policies and practices at the operational level. And this is the topic we're here today to explore. On one hand, the failure to incorporate human rights standards in the design, implementation, and evaluation of bank projects has generated a number of adverse effects at the local level, such as land grabs, mass evictions, and forced displacement that obviously could have been prevented. We will hear testimony today about 3 such cases in Kosovo, Ethiopia, and Peru, in which the people who are supposed to be helped by a development initiative end up being harmed. A country's own formal commitment to protect its people's rights, even when it exists, is not enough in the face of the temptation of millions of dollars in international investment. But if the bank's own operating standards incorporated rights protections, these outcomes could be avoided. On the other hand, by not incorporating human rights, the bank is foregoing guidance that could help ensure that its projects and programs contribute as effectively as possible to improving the conditions of human dignity, because that is the real goal of development. Increasing income is a means to that end, not the end itself. The World Bank is not the only international financial institution, nor the only development agency, but it is arguably among the most influential. It is a major source of funding and technical assistance for developing countries, and it has contributed to alleviating many crises around the world. Its policies and practices exert considerable influence. The U.S. Congress has played and continues to play an important role vis-a-vis the World Bank and other international financial institutions. U.S. contributions to the bank require legislation. Congress oversees U.S. participation in the bank. The U.S. commercial interests engage with the bank. So I believe the Congress is well positioned to encourage the bank to incorporate human rights into its operational policies and practices, which in turn would have a positive effect on the entire development field. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of my remarks the bad news that confronts us on a daily basis. I will close by repeating something I've been saying all year. As a member of Congress, I'm looking not just to criticize, but to identify new and creative ways to contribute to improving the human rights situation around the world. We need to understand what's gone wrong in the past and what is still going wrong today. But we especially need to focus on what to do to change things for the better future. So I very much look forward to hearing the testimonies today, and especially the recommendations for what needs to change and how the U.S. Congress can support that change. So I'm very pleased to welcome the members of our first panel, who will present case studies of the negative consequences of development projects funded by the World Bank in partnership with other international financial institutions. Mr. Obang Metho, am I pronouncing that? Yeah, like Executive Director, Solidarity Movement for a New Ethiopia. Mr. Milton Sanchez, General Secretary, the Interinstitutional Platform of Selindin. Mr. Nazir Sinani, am I saying that? I'm from Massachusetts. My English is bad. So, I mean, I just wanted to, Safeguards Coordinator and Climate Change Coordinator, Bank Information Center. I thank you for your presence today. I would like to formally, I would like to formally submit the written testimonies of all the witnesses in this hearing. Mr. Metho, why don't we begin with you? And just make sure your green light is on here.
Yeah, it's on now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving us this opportunity to talk about these issues. That's very, very critical. I, would like my statement to be put on a record. This is a very crucial issue that really we are talking about today. The financial institutions, especially the World Banks, was set up to help those who are the most vulnerable people, or to help the peoples, not to hurt or to harm the peoples. The example that I'm going to give today, or the talk, I am not here as an expert, but I'm here as a witness, especially speaking on behalf of the Ethiopian people who have no voice. Being an indigenous from Ethiopia, not alone, I could say that I could speak on behalf of all Ethiopian. Organizations that I run is a social justice of diverse Ethiopian. And it's a social justice that based on principles. And that principle is to have an Ethiopia where our humanity come before anything else. An Ethiopia that where justice and the well-being of Ethiopians are all protected. In other words, no one will be free until we are all free. With that in mind, the example that I'm going to use is start almost, I would say that in 2008. In 2008, the Ethiopian government evicted a local people from their lands. I think that you mentioned on your statements. In around 2008, there were food shortage around the world, and there were people who were protesting, looking, for food. And some of the investors realized that investing in food would be the most needed. And so what happened was they realized that we have almost, in the next few years, we'll have 9 billion people, and these people need food to be fed. And they went looking for a more fertile land. And where do you find the lands? Africa will become one of the key places. And so when they did that, some of this land that the investor won was not a land that nobody lived in. It's a land that had been occupied by the indigenous people who live in that place. And this is where the case of Ethiopia come in. The Gambela region of southwest of Ethiopia, where I come from, it's a very most fertile area. By that time, the Ethiopian government decided that they were to remove the people by what they call villagization, moving the people from the place that where they've been living for generations and to some place that where they were told that you are here on your own. Keeping in mind that you said earlier, the image of Ethiopia, what we know is it's starvation, no food, lack of food. That's what Ethiopian has been known. It's not because Ethiopians don't have a fertile land to feed themselves. Ethiopians don't have the system that will be able to sustain to feed their own peoples. So these Ethiopians that were evicted from the land, these was not people who depend on food aid. It was people that who use the land to feed their families. I'm one example of those. I was not raised by the income that had been brought from the office. I was raised from the income that come from the land. To me, the land is my identity, my culture, my value. And when you take a land away from me, then you take away my future, my livelihood. To me, it's not a land grab, it is a life grab. So when the local people were evicted from Gambela regions in southwest of Ethiopia, at that time there was a study that which was done with Auckland Institute. What we found was 78% of the land grabber are domestic local peoples, 22 almost that from abroad. And based on that, the Human Rights Watch and other, when they studied, they found that the local people who had been displaced from their land, especially the indigenous Anuak people, was evicted by the money that which was given by the World Bank, PBS. And then by that time, the local Anuak that, requested, and thanks to the Congress that, a few years back, the Congress has introduced and to make sure that the World Bank is accountable to have inspection panels where the World Bank will be able to investigate what's going on with themselves. So these local people then, submit an appeals. And thanks to those appeal committee and the inspection panel went to Ethiopia. They interviewed the local people. Those Anuak who were, left Ethiopia, in Kenya, in South Sudan, they went there. And then the report came out. According to the report, the World Bank has violated their law. Even Dr. Kim admitted that. And when someone violates the law, there's supposed to be reinforcement to that law. If there's no reinforcement to law, it's meaningless. The World Bank admitted. Just last month, Dr. Kim gave another money, $350 million to Ethiopia. Why? Because what I see now is Ethiopia, for most of you who don't know, It's a country that's been considered by Obama administration, Bush administration, as a ally on war on terror. The Ethiopian liberty, the Ethiopian futures have been ignored because for the security. As a result, Ethiopians are suffering. So because of that, the World Banks pretty much can do whatever they want. And now that's where we come in. The Congress, if the World Banks cannot live up to their own violations, their own laws, then the Congress has to go up to do that. And this is why we are coming here to tell the Congress, we have people who have been, harmed by the money that which has been given by the World Bank. The money that World Bank got by being approved by the Congress. And this money, no one has been made accountable. Transparency, accountability is non-existent. So in other words, in Ethiopia, this is a country that where they passed a law, Charity Proclamation Bill. In Ethiopia, civil society is non-existent. Journalists have been put in jail. The bloggers have been put in jail. This is a country that where it is against the law for women's rights, child rights, disabled rights, reconciliation, the value, the principle that Americans founded on. And then this is a country that passed a law, anti-terror laws. All the Ethiopian political dissents are being put in jail. The journalists have been put in jail for writing, just simply. Just because they are a friend or alliance on war on terror, they've been allowed to get away with it. So now let's come to this. If in Ethiopia we don't have a rule of law, the people in Ethiopia are looking for somebody else to speak for them. And if the World Bank cannot speak up for those peoples, where else do these people go to? I don't lose hope. Because again, in this country we live in, the World Banks get portion of money from the US, and they cannot get it without approval from the Congress. So this is where I come in coming to my conclusion remark. The World Bank has failed miserably. The money that's supposed to help the people harm the peoples. The World Bank is supposed to be the adult in the room to tell the kids. But in other words, they did not live up to their responsibility. I want to hint my remark with this. We already know the World Banks did not live. There's no compensation. Those local people who are being evicted, even though it's been proved, they did not do anything. What I'm hoping from the Congress, to include an appropriation committee, to making sure that if the World Bank money is to go and harm the people, maybe it's not worth it giving it in the first place. At the end of the day, I am not against helping the poor peoples, but I'm against ignoring the suffering of the peoples. In a case, if the World Bank don't leave that, what makes them different than Ethiopian government that has a constitution, they don't follow the constitution? Ethiopian that claim that they are democratic when they win election 100%. Ethiopian which say that there's rule of law when anyone been put in jail without any trial. What's the difference if the rhetorics of Ethiopian government claiming that they are democratic, winning 100%? There's no civil societies. Rule of law doesn't exist. Journalists have been accused of being a terrorist because journalists usually terrorists are known by harming people, but not by fans. So in this mind, I just want to say that yes, it has been proved without reasonable doubt. It has been proved, but the World Bank has lived up to that. And I hope that the Congress will live up to their responsibility. At the end of the day, our humanity has no boundaries. The suffering that which is being done by those governments should not get away with it because they are alliance on war on terror. US can have it both ways. To have a government that respected the Ethiopian people, have the rule of law, and have a government that really can protect the national interest of the US. In the long run, all of us have right, have responsibility for the well-being of those who are vulnerable, who cannot speak for themselves.
And let me say at the outset that this commission will work with you on the specifics in each of your countries. So the staff is happy to work with you to figure out how we can follow up, whether it's with our government or whether it's with the World Bank, on some of the specifics that you outlined in your testimony. Because, you know, this is more than just about taking testimony. I mean, we want to be helpful and constructive to some of the issues that you outlined. So I just want to make sure that you know that that's a standing offer, and I'm happy to follow up on all the things that you mentioned here today. And the beepers that you're hearing in the background is a vote. So I'll have to leave a little while and come back. But just so you know, we're not being cleared out of this room. It's just there's a vote going on. You know, I'm trying to understand. I mean, when the World Bank gets involved in projects like the ones that you all outlined, when it comes to human rights and environmental protections and land rights, I mean, obviously there are the laws in your country, and I've yet to see a country that doesn't have a really good constitution and really nice sounding laws. Whether they enforce those laws and uphold those laws is always a challenge. But there's that avenue of trying to, you know, go through the courts or go through the process in a particular country. I guess I'm curious about the process for people like you and community advocates when it comes to dealing with the World Bank. I mean, how do you make these concerns known to the bank? How do they receive you? What is the process that you go through? Did they listen to you? That's, I guess.
Yes, you know, as I was saying, that an example of Ethiopia, for instance, there's a local people that who submit a complaint telling the World Bank that according to the World Bank, there's a law that, you know, if your money is being given to someone and that money does harm to the people, the World Banks, not the countries, but the World Bank have responsibility.
Right.
And this is something which was really the work of Congress, you know, that put the World Bank to make the World Bank accountable. And so for that, then the World Bank did their own investigation, you know, the inspection panels. So this investigation was not done by a human rights activist, was not done by anybody. The very same World Bank, part of their own body, investigated, and they found that there's a plot. They found that, yes, that's why I say even Dr. Kim admitted there's hair into that. So where we have the problems, once that is admitted, there's supposed to be some kind of compensation or somehow to change it.
Right.
And that's where I come, where there's a problem. So they did not do that. Even, for instance, one other thing which I find is that they say, you know, when the World Bank went to do investigation in Ethiopia, they hire a local gentleman, a pastor, to translate the language, Umwatagwa. So Ethiopian government, when the report came out, they locked this man in jail, the man who translated for the World Bank. Even the World Bank did not have audacity to go in and make a statement. Dr. Kim did not even come out and make a statement for someone that who translate. These men come out to help them. And then when he was locked out, then we did not hear from the World Bank. So in other words, like someone saying that, you know what, I know how to swim, and when I jump at the rivers, I know you will be there. And then once you get in, they're not going to come to your aid. So in this case, that leave alone, the Ethiopian law is there. The Ethiopian government law is there. And that law is really not good for their own people. This is a country which is, for example, that's why I say that.
But just so the World Bank did an investigation.
Yes.
Right.
They found their finding.
And you agree with the findings?
Yes, the finding, then we agree with it. Yes, the finding was good.
So nothing happened in the aftermath of those findings?
Exactly. They found the finding. The finding was that their money has done harm to the local indigenous people. The people they intend to help has ended up being actually hurt as a result of the money that the World Bank has given to the Ethiopian government. So in that case, then the World Bank is supposed to change the way things are and not give them money. But what they have done is give another more money to that country without correcting anything at all. And that's where we have the problem with. So admitted that we have a problem and not doing anything about it, it's just.
And so when you approach the World Bank, or what was the response? They issued a report that you agree with the findings, but they've done nothing to do anything that will correct the situation. And they're giving more money, right?
Exactly.
So what is the response of the World Bank to
So
not acting on their report?
So the management was saying that, yes, we agree. What's wrong with we agree that, our work or, our money has done harm to the peoples. And then we will try to make sure that this thing doesn't happen again. That's what Dr. Kim said. But giving more money, what makes us think that this will not happen again? That's what I was saying, that you cannot just say that, yes, we will do it if you don't do it.
So what you're telling me in the case of Ethiopia, that you see nothing changed in how they deliver aid or how they condition aid